Reality Check
with Charles Ellison
right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check Tuesday. We're live on 96.1 FM, 900 AM on Philadelphia radio, but of course throughout the nation, throughout the world, many of you listening in also at WURDradio.com, watching us on WURD TV, listening in again on our WURD app as well. Joining us now is Roshni Nedungadi. She is a strategist with HIT Strategies, and more on HIT Strategies at HitStrat, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong. HitStrat.com, especially for their Black Track poll. We had the founder, CEO of HIT Strategies on once before about the Black Track poll, Terrence Woodbury. So fantastic monthly poll gauging, measuring Black voter sentiment. A very important poll, in fact, and arguably the most important, if not one of the most important polls out there gauging or tracking Black voter sentiment. Roshni here to talk more about what's on the minds of Black voters these days, especially as we've got quite a bit going on. Roshni, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning.
Excellent, excellent. So, you know, and you all are watching those surveys, watching those polls a lot more closely, a lot more intently with the 2022 elections coming up. I am curious to see like how Black voters felt about these, or if there's any data there showing how Black voters felt about these Senate confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson. How do they feel about her overall as a nominee?
Yeah, apart from our Black Track poll that we've been asking about their feelings about the Supreme Court and their feelings about Biden nominating a Black woman, which they're very, very favorable towards. We've also been doing a series of focus groups with Black voters and digging in a little bit deeper into these conversations. Really overwhelmingly, Black-based Democratic voters are very enthusiastic about the idea that Judge Jackson could be nominated to the Supreme Court. And they're very excited to see someone like her on the national stage and given this platform.
Very excited about that. And I suspect not too keen on how she was treated by Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Yes, there was definitely a big worry of theirs, especially before the confirmation hearings were happening. They were sure that Republicans in the Senate would not treat the nominee, whoever she was at the time, well, and would be racist towards her, but did feel like this could potentially be a motivating factor for many Black Democrats going into the midterm elections. In our Black Track data, 54% said that if they were to see mistreatment of this in this confirmation process, they would be more motivated to go out to vote in November to support Black Democrats up and down the ballot.
Interesting. I do find too. I think I want to get your thoughts on this, Roshni. I find like Republicans include. I mean, so they've been overall, generally speaking, they've been resistant towards the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson. They have been using her as a talking point or using as an opportunity to push or promote their talking points. I don't know. It seems like, but they've been very careful. It's like they've set like their own sort of tripwire, if you will, or they're just like sort of an inch away from whatever tripwire they have to make sure that they don't go too far. Because they understand that could unleash the wrath of Black voters, especially Black woman voters, who would see that kind of treatment or that kind of conversation. So I don't know. I think they've been very careful. You know, some people may argue that's not the case, but I think that they've been rather skillful and very shrewd in how they've been playing this.
I think, in some ways you're right, but I think that Black voters are watching a little bit more carefully here. They expect to see this kind of insidious dog whistle language from Republicans, and they came out with that during the confirmation hearings. I mean, Tucker Carlson asking to see her LSAT score, Lindsey Graham claiming that she is not fit to be confirmed after voting for her multiple times in the past, questioning her Ivy League background when they didn't do the same for Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. I think the voters who were watching the confirmation hearing closely heard those dog whistles and understand what it means.
Now, do we feel that Democratic senators on the Judiciary Committee and then the Democratic Party, as you know, the Democratic Senate leadership, also Democratic Party as a whole, did enough to defend her, or are doing enough to defend her right now? Because we still got her confirmation vote that's coming up, and that's not guaranteed.
Right.
So we did hear from Senator Joe Manchin. He does intend to support her. But there's some concerns there, like Senator Kyrsten Sinema has not said anything, the senator from Arizona. So that has some people rather anxious about what the outcome could be. So, I mean, do people feel like, Democrats have been doing enough? The most we saw was definitely vigorous defense of Judge Jackson from Senator Cory Booker. And also you could say from Senator Amy Klobuchar out of Wisconsin, but, others were saying it, and also Senator Alex Padilla out of California. But for the others, at least from what I'm hearing, not so much.
Yes, I really think that Booker's speech and line of questioning for her was a great example for what Democrats need to be doing more publicly now, in between the hearings and when the confirmation is going to be happening. A very outspoken defense of her record, and I think Democrats are going to run into a very big problem with not only Black voters, but young voters and other progressive voters around the country if they don't defend her and confirm her enthusiastically going into the next couple of weeks. Really, young voters and Black voters want to see her confirmed and want to see Democrats in Congress really fighting for something. And this is a great example of a fight that they can own and have, and nominate a wonderful, experienced, and qualified woman to be on the Supreme Court.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on that. I feel like that this also could be a major rallying point for Democrats, as far as to rally and really motivate their base in 2022, because they're not doing a lot of that. I don't think. There's all kinds of missed opportunities out there. They just keep dropping the ball on this. But, talking about this confirmation process for Ketanji Brown Jackson, this could be a rallying point. And so, there's lots of arguments. I think even the Republican, the Senate Judiciary Committee talking points have presented an opportunity, like questioning interracial marriage, for example. That's a no-brainer. But I don't see Democrats coming out strong. Like, what are we doing? Going back in time? Like, where did this come from? The other things too. Other types of arguments that were brought up or proposed. What are those opportunities? Are they taking advantage of them?
I think it is a really good opportunity for Democrats who, often on the Democratic side, our voters don't know that much about the Supreme Court. It's a very, there's a lot of process and involved in understanding how the Supreme Court fits into everyday politics. And I think that Democrats have a really good opportunity here to highlight a win on the Supreme Court, putting a very progressive justice on the Supreme Court that is going to be advocating for our issues up and down when they come through the Supreme Court, and tying that into, we're about to head into a summer with a lot of bad Supreme Court decisions, and people are going to be upset and hearing more about the Supreme Court and what they're working on. Remembering that Democrats have put a very progressive justice on the Supreme Court to hopefully in the future help prevent some of those rulings and counter some of the bad things that we're seeing around the country. I think the Democrats they have an opportunity there to use this confirmation hearing and this confirmation as a tie-in to why it's so important to vote for Democrats in the Senate and in Congress to support progressive Supreme Court nominations in the future.
Do we know what the counter, do we have a sense, Roshni, of what Democratic counter should be to some of these attack lines? So it wasn't just on interracial marriage, but, about crime. So we do seem to be going back in time on that. And I think that Republicans have successfully not dominated the narrative on crime, especially with all this rising violent crime that's been happening. So there's on crime, critical race theory, the fate, the future of transgender athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm particularly worried about about criminal justice issues. Just not seeing enough on that, and then it's gotten more problematic, of course, this week with Biden's budget proposal. $32 billion more for police funding. So I know people are really incensed about that. What are the counters that Democrats should be coming up with in a moment like this?
Yeah, from our Black Track poll, we've been asking this question about whether Black voters prefer a candidate who is vocally anti-racist rather than one who acknowledges racism but focuses on other issues first and foremost. And 77% of Black voters around the country would prefer candidates who are openly anti-racist in the policies that they're pursuing. So to your point, this is really, we can highlight the racism coming from the GOP, highlight our stances on these issues as being anti-racist, and really motivate a whole group of voters going into the midterm. Additionally, on this idea of crime, 77% of Black voters who we surveyed in the Black Track survey prefer a candidate who is smarter on crime rather than tougher on crime. So ignoring the talking points coming from the right and focusing on how do we solve crime through preventative measures, through understanding, through taking away funding from the police and putting it towards community engagement and community services. How do we be smarter about how we solve crime rather than tougher on crime?
Right.
Would be a very motivating stance for a lot of these Democrats to take going into the midterms.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, the conversation, the language that's been deployed here, defund the police versus fund the police, has really complicated that debate, or really complicated. I mean, how does that resonate? I mean, once again, as we're in this moment of really explosive violent crime, especially in a city like Philadelphia, what we're dealing with. And I mean, it's happening in all the major cities, particularly where you have high concentrations of Black residents. I mean, does that really resonate? Like defund the police, does that really resonate? Because it's just like they're thinking, oh, well, that means that you're taking away a layer of protection from me. And so I wonder about that. I think that you're right. I think that Black voters are smart and savvy and are like, you know what, I just want smarter policing. I don't mind policing. I just want you to be smarter, and I want you to perform and get it done right when you go about it. But at the same time, I'm not so sure about. I think that there was a mistake. I think that there was like a strategic mistake there, heavily relying so much on defund the police. I don't think that was well thought out.
Yeah, I think Republicans too have really seized on this idea and pushed this. They're making it into a forced choice between more police and public safety. And so you have to, if you think they're really portraying this idea that the absence of police or the absence of more funding for police means the absence of public safety. And that's just not the case. That's also not what the defund movement is about. And so I think it's really incumbent on Democrats up and down the ballot, especially in our big cities, to make sure that they are explaining what public safety means in a smart on crime way rather than a tough on crime way, and explaining that defunding the police or even taking funding away from the police is not taking it away from public safety, but could in fact make our communities that much safer by funding root causes that are causing crime, and making sure that we're hitting those root causes from where they start rather than trying to fix them on the back end.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. It's so difficult, right, Roshni? I mean, when you're dealing with, and a lot of it has to do with, I mean, two things here. One is that our politics operates on the soundbite and on, catchy, punchy phrases and, bits or slogans, as some people like to call it. And so it's really tough because it's like you want to have these fleshed out, smart conversations, but you can't, especially when you're dealing with an electorate. I mean, over half of Americans can't read beyond a 6th grade level. So, and it really, and that has an impact on how we have these conversations. It's like, we want to be able to, we have no choice but to, so we can make smart decisions at the polling place. We have to have a fleshed out conversation, but we can't. And so it's like, it's this constant struggle to come up with like the right kind of messaging.
Yeah, and I think that oftentimes our politicians want to explain things in terms of higher level policy explanations, really dig into the details because that's the world that they live in. They want to understand all of the policy implications, but oftentimes they really need to step back and explain in plain English what is going on. What does defund the police mean? What do we mean when we say we're smarter, we're going to be smarter on crime? What does it mean to attack the root causes of crime in your city? And just take it a step back and just talk to the people in a normal way that they would understand what's going on. When we do focus groups and take a step back and explain, like, for instance, pick apart pieces of like the infrastructure bill that Congress passed recently, when we're able to take it to focus groups and say, what do you think of the infrastructure bill? No one really understands what's going on there. When we say, here are all of the components that were in the infrastructure bill, and here are the components that are going to specifically help your communities, they're very favorable of this bill and the components of the bill. They just need it taken apart and explained to them in a little bit more detail and in what that means to them and their lives. And I think that, and we have that opportunity to take a step back and explain that in terms of crime as well, and show people how we are actually working to prevent crime rather than punish crime.
You know, I think you're onto something too, and I do think that are you all exploring this or looking at this? How like Democrats could be better at like framing specific issues for specific groups of voters. So hey, here's the Infrastructure Act. This is how these are the positive implications of the Infrastructure Act for Black people. Here are the positive implications for brown people. Here are the positive implications. You see what I'm saying? Like breaking it down, localizing it more and more, because everyone has unique needs. We're not all the same, and so we all have unique needs. And I think that can be done. Oh, hey, well, here are the positive implications of this for, since you know they so much want to go after suburban white voters. Okay, well, this is what this positively does for you, but it's different. I think it's kind of a lazy approach. I want to get your parting thoughts on that, Roshni, when it's like using kind of that big major issue and then just assuming that, okay, well, we're just going to come up with one big message for everyone. No, I think you do need to go through that work, through that cycle of tailoring it for each individual demographic group.
You do, and people are going through so many things on an individual level these days, especially coming out of the pandemic environment, that they really need to understand, how are you working to make their lives better, their lives, their families' lives, their communities' lives. And if you're unable to explain that in simple terms, break it down, how does this affect you personally? I think then voters are right to be skeptical of what you're working on.
Yeah. We've been talking with Roshni Nedungadi. She is a strategist, chief strategist over at HIT Strategies. Go to HIT Strat. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Hitstrat.com to also check out their Black Track poll, which comes out monthly, and we're encouraging them to talk with us every month as much as possible when that poll comes out, and it's really good to see them. Really good to see Roshni here, because I think it's just wonderful work what you all are doing. Once again, go to hitstrat.com for more on HIT Strategies and to check out their Black Track poll as well. Thank you so much, Roshni, for the conversation. We're looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Be safe.